Hey folks, it's Dom with Florida Deere. Today I want to go over the differences and similarities on these two K91s from 4X5 series. And one came out of this 455, which was that one. And that one came out of I think a 445. So basically I'm just going to go over the similarities first and then we'll go over the differences. So the similarities are basically everything in the middle case is going to be the same. So this one, as you can see here, this is how the hydrostatic transmission goes. This would be forward or reverse. I can't remember which one because I don't have it oriented correctly, but this is also supposed to be attached to that, as you can see over here. And then you have this is your traction lock. So when I think the traction lock piece attaches here, and it basically forces that. I can't do it right now with one hand and also without this thing moving, but that pin goes in there and then it locks the rear end so you can have a little bit more traction. And then this down here is the brake, so this operates somehow too. I think that involves that as well. And so those are your two attachments on that side, and then you have two attachments on this side, and then you also have your input shaft there from the engine, and your drive shaft, and then you have your two hydraulic ports right there that basically service all the hydraulics on the tractor. And then up here where I have these spots missing, you have the check valves, which are right here. I had to take this thing off first, and then to get these off, and I will move these to the other unit. This one is, yep, there we go. And they do operate. These are supposed to be able to squish down so it can freewheel. That's that kind of whole thing about the lever off to the side. And then this, if you open this up, it has the ability to, you can shim that, put some shims in there, like a little half shim or a thin shim, and then or a whole shim or thicker shim, and then that can increase the pressure. I want to say the half shims are like 100 or 150 psi, and then the full shims are more than that. I don't know, like 200 or 250 or something like that. Somebody will probably correct me on that. And so what I'm going to do is when I switch these cases, I'm going to put obviously the check valves in there, and then I might adjust the pressure upwards. Not crazy. I think these things are set for the factory at 1000 psi hydraulic pressure. I believe they're capable of 1500 if I'm correct about that. And there's some people or one guy on a forum that I know that runs it at 3000, and he's apparently run it for 3000 psi for years and not had an issue with it. I certainly wouldn't recommend that, but I mean, obviously if he's been able to get away with it, they're pretty stout units. So, and then they have the PTO solenoid back here. This one I will have to move that over because it didn't come with it. And so those are the similarities. And the differences are, this one will take only 6 quarts of fluid, and this will take 7 quarts of fluid. That's why I was initially concerned that the center cases were different, but I'm told that they are the same, and that I know other people that have done the swap. So the other thing too is that these are much shorter. These shafts right here, axle shafts, are much shorter. I think the total width between these two is 35.5, where on the all-wheel steer, you're looking at 44 inches. So 35.5 inches to 44, pretty big difference, 8.5 inch difference. These have to be to a certain extent stronger because, it's the same sort of tractor, but, the fact that the distance is further makes it, requires a little bit more rigidity. And so the other thing is obviously this part of the axle is different, right? These things have, universal joints, and then they have swivel points up here that are greasable. The one on the bottom is not greasable. And I'm guessing most of the pressure's up here, or they thought if we put a Zerk fitting on the bottom, it'll just get ripped off, which is probably not completely unfounded. Well, in here, you don't have any of that kind of stuff. They're just straight. And also, there's no spots to put the bracket for the all-wheel steer. So over here, you can see there's a bracket not that part, but that part goes up underneath like so, something like that. And then these go out to each wheel, and they cause the wheel to turn. And of course you have your connection here that operates it, that connects it to the front steering unit too. So that I thought initially that might have been one of the things, as I saw this attached to the bottom of the transmission, but it's actually the bracket. As you can see here on these, this is part of the axle that I'll take off. It has a spot there and a spot there and a spot here and one up here for those bolts. So there's actually, again, nothing different from the center piece of the transmission. It's basically on the ends of the axles, or the inner parts of the axles, that have those connections. And I think that is it. The difference between these two units is going to be close to 100 pounds. I think the difference between a two-wheel steer and a four-wheel steer is about 90 or 95 pounds between the tractors, as the way they're spec'd out from Deere. And I will tell you, I jokingly said that this transmission is probably heavier than the manual transmission in my Bronco, but I believe that is completely accurate, as I looked up, the one in the Bronco is only 130 pounds, and that's with fluid. So, and the difference between the two is going to be largely, most of the difference in the tractor is going to be in the rear end. It sounded probably kind of a little bit weird, but so I'm thinking that this thing is probably closer to 200 pounds, because this was no lightweight either. This was still pretty stinking heavy to lift up there, and then this is just outrageous with these giant universal joints and the hubs and stuff that are attached, and just the sheer weight of this, and then the centerpiece is just crazy. So anyways, that is just a rundown of the differences and similarities between these two John Deere Tough Torque K91 transmissions. All right, folks, so here's your relief valve. Relief valve. And then you shim this with either these two bit larger ones, which you really can't tell that these are large. You can maybe tell that one's a little bit thicker. And then you have these little really small ones. Once that sucker is sideways, you can't even tell, it's barely there. Same with these. So these all afford you additional pressure. So I believe it comes with a big one, a thicker one, and a smaller one. One of the units had an extra small one in it, so it was probably already adjusted to, like, say 1150. And I believe like each of these is about, so in addition to having one of each already in it, if you put one of these, would be, I believe, 150 psi, and each one of these would be an additional 300. So what we're going to do is we're going to stick one of these in there, and then both of these. We'll do a big one, a small one, then a big one, and they go on top of this. So this goes like this and here. So this is between the check valves, and then they'll sit right on top of there, just like so. And then we'll put the cap on it and go from there. I hope you liked the video. If you liked it, you can hit the like button. I'd appreciate that. And if you wanted to see more videos about John Deere garden tractors or the John Deere 1 Series, you can hit the subscribe button as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.